Obi-Wan had to fight Darth Maul for probably what was like, I mean, they were like cutting in between the fight to go to Anakin and Padme and this and that. Like that was probably like a 15-minute fight at least.
15-minute fight at least. A 15-minute fight at least.
Star Wars Theory has recently been putting out videos defending and praising Ahsoka. Now, him liking the show isn't the issue. The issue at play here is him saying incorrect things to justify some of the decisions that were made in the Ahsoka show. The clip I just showed you is an example of that. Specifically, it involves the issue of characters being brought back to life after being stabbed by a lightsaber. If you've seen my previous video, you'll know that my feelings on this subject are pretty clear, and that I believe it makes lightsabers useless. In addition, it diminishes the stakes and importance of a lightsaber fight. In the 6 movies, we saw the consequence of a lightsaber, and we saw that in the first episode of the Star Wars saga, where Qui-Gon got stabbed and died. That sets an established lore in Star Wars that if you get stabbed by a lightsaber, you die. However, Theory is going through all these mental gymnastics and far-stretch ideas to justify Sabine surviving that lightsaber stab. Now, I want to break this clip down and point out the flaws in his argument.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. Qui-Gon's death is literally the most meaningless thing now in Star Wars. It's like a meme at this point. Like, everyone just gets stabbed with lightsabers, and we're literally, like, my first interaction in the stream, literally, when she got stabbed, I'm just like, she's probably alive. Yeah, so look, here's what I think. I think, first of all, it's absolutely ridiculous. Everyone keeps getting stabbed with lightsabers and they're alive. You know, like Kylo. Forget Reva. Reva is like a god amongst peasants, okay? She is literally the invincible of the most invincible. I think getting stabbed by lightsabers at this point is so meaningless, where we used to live in a world where a lightsaber touches you and your like literal organs will boil. Now, because this is not letting me sleep at night, I've been thinking about Qui-Gon and his death. And what is the difference between Qui-Gon's death, being stabbed by Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, and all of these other ridiculous stabbings in Star Wars?
Okay, he acknowledges the fact that these stabbings that are occurring in Disney Star Wars is ridiculous. In addition, it seems like he's only trying to make sense of it all to try to make himself feel better. Nothing wrong with that. However, let's find out if his line of reasoning does make sense.
Sabine, she got stabbed to the right of the abdomen. She was obviously out for the count for a few days or however long. She'd made a recovery. I can somewhat believe this. The only difference between Qui-Gon's death and everyone else was that he didn't have medical attention, and the fact that he was stabbed directly in the stomach, in the middle, probably severing his spine and going right through it and burning all of his organs. It wasn't like a quick, it was like that saber was in there for a while, and it was probably cooking his organs for a good several seconds. I mean, I think it was in there for like 1, 2, 3, like it was in there for a bit.
Sabine wasn't a quick in and out stab. It was in there for about the same amount as Qui-Gon. So yeah, and that goes with the Grand Inquisitor and Reva too.
Obi-Wan had to fight Darth Maul for probably what was like, I mean, they were like cutting in between the fight to go to Anakin and Padme and this and that. Like that was probably like a 15-minute fight at least.
What? Where did you get 15 minutes from? That is so ridiculous. The scenes that the movie cuts to while the fight is happening is not a time jump. All these scenes are happening at the same time. There's nothing that suggests there's a 5-minute time jump between each cut. So if it was 15 minutes, you were basically suggesting that Obi-Wan was holding on for dear life for 15 minutes. Because the actual fight was more like 2 minutes at most. Let me show you the timed evidence. Yeah, it looks more like 5 minutes in total. In the description, he reiterates that he thinks it's ridiculous that Sabine survived and Qui-Gon didn't, and is really only making it up. However, he did post a tweet still defending his stance, and even increased the time to 20 minutes. Why is he still defending? Oh, that's what it is. So we now know that he's a Filoni fan. Okay, no problem there. But wait, hold on. What's this all about? Ahsoka Episode 3, the most George Lucas episode. Okay, let's see if that's true.
Many fans don't want Sabine to be Force sensitive, including myself. However, now that Dave has gone to this explanation, which I never thought that he would go this far into something that George mentioned outside of lore, outside of movies, sort of. I am actually really okay with it, and it makes complete sense because it's stuff that George has been talking about for decades. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Well, George Lucas established many, many years ago that everyone is Force sensitive. Yes.
I think you need to read more carefully. Let's read and break down what he's displaying here. If we have enough midichlorians in our body, we can have a certain amount of control over our personal force and learn how to use it, like the Buddhist practice of being able to walk on hot coals. Some people can't because they just don't have as many midichlorians. That's just genetics. So the more midichlorians we have, the more accessibility we have to the Force. So we have to be trained how to use it. So far, I don't see where it says everyone is Force sensitive. In fact, it seems like the opposite. The key things to look at here are the word enough and the phrase some people can't because they just don't have as many midichlorians. So right here, George is telling us that not everyone is Force sensitive and has accessibility to the Force. In addition, he is telling us that you need a certain number of midichlorians to use the Force.
Watto, that means literally any character that you have seen in Star Wars who is sentient, meaning alive, is Force sensitive. Now, it's all dependent on if that person has interest to manifest and develop their abilities or not.
Again, wrong. It's not really about interest. Do you think all the children who were brought to the Jedi Council initially wanted to be a Jedi? Like, as a kid, you don't really know anything, especially if you were just born or you're a toddler. So being taken to the Jedi Temple to train is really your life, and that's all you can really remember. In a way, you were kind of forced into it. No pun intended. There are very few people out there, and I think it's the same logic with the Star Wars universe, who remember when they were born or even remember when they were 2 or 3 years old.
There are things like midichlorian differences in Force users that dictate who is more gifted and who isn't, and also who will have an easier time using the Force compared to those who won't. George Lucas has said it's like learning karate. Everyone can take a class, but it depends if you're into that sort of thing or not.
Okay, well, it would be nice if you showed evidence of him saying that, but that's okay because I have it right here. And it looks like it was taken over 40 years ago, before the prequels came out, but once the prequels came out and established midichlorians, that quote is irrelevant, especially since his most recent interview with Paul Duncan was published on December 13th, 2020, and what's ironic is that you use this book as a reference.
She mentions that using the Force can't be something you do fast. Sabine says that she doesn't feel the Force, and Ahsoka says, the Force resides in all living things, even you, where Sabine questions why everyone doesn't just use the Force if that's the case, and Ahsoka tells her that talent is a major factor. This is of course very true in the sense that if we compared Anakin to Sabine, we see that Anakin is extremely talented and gifted in the Force, not to mention he has an incredible amount of midichlorians that Sabine most definitely does not possess. If you want more clarification on midichlorians from George Lucas, please see my midichlorian video.
Alright, let's see what we're working with. George Lucas finally explains midichlorians. I'm pretty sure they were explained in The Phantom Menace, but go on.
Midichlorians are the equivalent of mitochondria in living organisms and photosynthesis in plants. I simply combined them for easier consumption by the viewer. Mitochondria create the chemical energy that turns one cell into 2 cells.
Okay, nothing much here, just gaining more knowledge about midichlorians. Let's move forward to where we start to see the missteps.
If we have enough midichlorians in our body, we can have a certain amount of control over our personal Force and learn how to use it. Like the Buddhist practice of being able to walk on hot coals. Some people can't because they just don't have as many midichlorians. That's just genetics. So the more midichlorians we have, the more accessibility we have to the Force. So we have to be trained how to use it. And so, as I will continue in a second here, George said that everyone has the ability to use the Force.
Okay, we went over this earlier.
For example, we can be good at math and on the piano, but to become a physicist or concert pianist, you have to be trained. You have to be trained to use the Force, to use the genes that give you a talent that is different from everybody else.
Okay, what Lucas is referring to are those who have enough midichlorians, not everyone, when giving this example. He uses this analogy to make the point that even though you have enough midichlorians to use the Force, you still need to be trained. Here is another example to further explain Lucas's point. Let's say you were born into a very athletic family. Your dad played in the NBA and your mom was a gold medalist in track and field. And you are very athletic yourself and decide to want to become a basketball player. You seem to be really good at it right away, and you decide you want to become an NBA basketball player. Even if you are extremely gifted athletically, you still need to excessively train, as the NBA only takes the best players in the world. That's the same logic here. Even though you may have the right amount of midichlorians, you still need excessive training in order to use the Force. Here's another clip of Theory still sticking his foot on the ground about this subject.
George had said that everyone in the Star Wars galaxy is Force sensitive.
Everyone has the Force in them. Everyone. And there's two sides to the Force. The dark side, which is selfishness, and the light side, which is compassion.
Okay, now yes, it is true that everyone has the Force, but in order to use it like the Jedi or Sith, you need to have a certain midichlorian count. I mean, the idea of everyone having the Force was introduced in A New Hope.
The Force? The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
When Obi-Wan says it surrounds us and penetrates us, he's not just talking about Jedi, he's talking about all living things. In this context, when Lucas says everyone has the Force, he's also including a snake or a small ant. So just because everyone has the Force doesn't mean everyone is Force sensitive. Force sensitivity refers more to those who have enough midichlorians and have a strong connection to the Force. To say only Jedi have the Force is like saying nobody else has souls. Every living thing has the Force. The Force is like God and the Holy Spirit. It creates life. His energy surrounds us and penetrates through us. But in Star Wars, in order to have accessibility to that type of energy, you need to have enough midichlorians to do so. In terms of Sabine, if she turns out to be Force sensitive and is able to use the Force, it's going to be done like how Rey was able to use the Force. Where's the special talent at play here? Is there a genetic link? Doing this invites people to disagree with you, unless you take the time to have a thorough explanation as to why Sabine should be Force sensitive. Having good exposition lets us know why things are happening and why it's important. If you have bad exposition, or none at all, you lose your audience's attention because they don't know why this character or why the conflict is important. And if your audience is able to understand the importance of the character or the conflict, then they'll be able to follow along because they'll know what's at stake and or what makes them so unique. And just to be clear, I love Star Wars Theory. This video is not intended out of hate. It's me simply refuting a couple of his recent takes that I disagree with. I have loved Theory since I discovered his channel and have been a subscriber for about 2 or 3 years now. The way he was able to build his channel to where it is now is extremely impressive, and his fan film was a huge part of that, and it was really, really well done. So I have mad respect for Theory, and I think some of the hate he's been getting over the years, especially with that whole Pablo Hidalgo incident, is super uncalled for. And after that whole deal, I thought Theory was going to be done with Disney Star Wars. But he's still giving them a chance because I believe he's hungry for new great Star Wars content, and he wants to stay optimistic. I personally am done with Star Wars, and I believe anyone who works for Disney Lucasfilm doesn't care about lore and canonical consistency, nor do they care about George. As for the Ahsoka show, I'll put out a review once it ends and see if I was right or wrong about it being a member berry and bait and switch type of show. Only time would tell. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment, and may the Force be with you.